Hey guys, tonight we drift softly into the dim-lit workshops of medieval barbers. Those curious souls who wielded scissors and scalpels with equal abandon, blending the trim of beards with the bold claims of medicine. Picture the flicker of tallow candles casting long shadows across wooden beams heavy with the scent of herbs and iron-tanged blood. These were men of the blade, trusted with faces and fates alike. Yet their healing hands often wandered into realms of peril and folly. Like, subscribe if you enjoy these quiet journeys through time. And comment below where you're listening from and what time it is there. Settle into your pillows. Let the world fade as we explore the gentle unraveling of their stories, one careful cut at a time. First, the forgotten art of the barber's pole. That swirling emblem twisting in the evening breeze outside timber-framed shops. Imagine a narrow street in 14th century London, where mist rises from the Thames like a sigh from the river's depths. A barber surgeon hangs his pole, red and white stripes echoing the bandages stained with blood and the clean linen beneath. This symbol, born in the shadows of monasteries and market squares, whispered promises of grooming and grace. Yet it masked deeper trades. Barbers, you see, were not mere clippers of hair. They were the everyday healers of a world without universities for every ailment. Guilds formed in the 12th century, like the Worshipful Company of Barbers in England, binding them to surgeons by 1540 under royal decree. Henry VIII himself decreed it, merging their fates in a charter that echoed through echoing halls. Daily life began at dawn's first blush, when cocks crowed faintly over thatched roofs. The barber rose, his breath fogging the frost-kissed window, to grind herbs in a mortar that smelled of lavender and bitter wormwood. Customers arrived, farmers with wine-chapped faces, merchants nursing boils from saddle sores. A shave came first warm lather from goat's fat and ash soap, spread with a badger hair brush that whispered against stubbled skin. The straight razor, honed on leather strops until it sang softly, glided like a river stone over contours of jaw and cheek. Blood might purl if the hand slipped, but that was mere prelude. For these men believed balance in humours demanded more than a close trim. Consider the humours, that ancient philosophy lingering like smoke from a dying fire. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile imbalances brought fever or flux. Barbers, armed with lancets, promised restoration. A lancet was a slender blade, its edge kissed by fire for cleanliness. Though cleanliness was a fleeting guest in those damp chambers, they'd bind the arm with a tourniquet of boiled cloth, tap veins that pulsed blue beneath translucent skin, and slice. Blood flowed into basins of earthenware, warm and metallic scented, collected until the patient paled like moonlight on snow. Leeches followed for precision, fat black creatures sourced from apothecaries' jars, wriggling as they latched to flesh. One chronicle from 1325, penned by a monk in Canterbury, recounts a barber treating a knight's melancholic distemper with 12 ounces drawn enough to leave the man swaying like reeds in a gentle wind. But oh, the superstitions woven into their craft. In rural France, barbers invoked saints, before incisions Saint Cosmas and Saint Damien, twin healers who mended without coin. A small altar niche held beeswax candles and a relic splinter, said to steady the hand. They chanted low Latin phrases. Voice is blending with the drip of rainwater from eaves. Patients, eyes half closed in trust or terror, clutched rosaries carved from boxwood. One quirky rite, smearing the blade with garlic paste to ward off foul airs, those miasmas thought to breed plague. Garlic's pungency filled the air, mingling with sweat and singed hair from the basin where locks were burned to ash, lest they harbor elves or demons folk beliefs stubborn as roots in stony soil. Daily routines deepened as markets bustled. Aftershaves, extractions, boils lanced with needles heated red-hot, pus bursting like overripe fruit, cleansed with wine vinegar that stung like nettles, teeth-pulled necks, gripped by forge-hard pliers, roots cracking with a sound like breaking twigs. Archaeology from a York dig reveals dental tools buried with barbers, their grips worn smooth by countless yanks. Pain was met with Persian's mandrake root steeped in mead, numbing tongues and minds into dreamy haze. Yet success bred folly. A barber in 1381 Paris, as noted in the registers of the University of Sorbonne complaints, boasted of curing gout by pulling toes' nails, leaving patients hobbling on bloodied feet. Subtle humor hides in their overreach. They thought cupping glass stones heated to draw blood blisters eased headaches. Flames licked inside, sucking skin taut with a pop, then cooled to purple welts. Patients swore by it, though chronicles hint many fainted from loss rather than relief. One tale from Fassades Chronicles, a Flemish barber cupping a lord's temples so vigorously, the noble swooned into his hearth, singed but cured of dizziness. Somehow it worked in their minds, these rituals binding community in shared endurance. As apprentices learned, the shop pulsed with rhythm. Boys of 12, indentured for 7 years, swept clippings that crunched underfoot like autumn leaves. They boiled instruments in cauldrons scented with rosemary, fetched leeches from ponds where frogs croaked lullabies. Masters taught by doing, holding young hands on razors, murmuring, steady as the moon's rise. Failures whispered to, a nicked artery in 1420 Bruges, blood arsing to puddle on rushes, the barber fleeing to monasteries for sanctuary. This world of blades and bombs sets the stage, but that leads us gently to the tooth puller's trade, where smiles turned to grimaces under ungentle grips. Next, imagine waking to the ache of a rotten molar in a world where smiles were rare treasures. Medieval barbers claimed dominion over dentures, their tools a grim arsenal gleaming in candlelight. Streets of 14th century Florence hummed with their calls, soft as distant bells, luring the afflicted. Shops nestled beside bakers, flour dust mingling with the sharp tang of abscessed breath. A patient slumped in a sturdy oak chair, padded with sheepskin worn to threads, head braced by an assistant's firm hands. The process unfolded like a somber ritual. First, probing with probes of silver wire, twisted to hook decay's edges. Pain flared, met with a rag soaked in opium poppy tincture, its syrupy sweetness dulling senses to whispers. Then the pliers forged by smiths, jaws toothed like wolf fangs, handles wrapped in leather for grip slick with sweat. The barber rocked back, leveraging shoulder against skull, until bone yielded with a muffled crack. Blood welled, coppery and warm, staunched with spiders' webs spun fine and sticky. A folk remedy from Saxon herbals. Quirky facts abound. In England, barbers filed teeth with rasp files to even humours, grinding enamel to dust that floated like mist. One 1375 guild record from Lincoln lists fines for overfiling unto stumps, leaving gums raw as winter fields. Superstitions flavoured it. Wormwood smoke blown into mouths to expel tooth worms. Mythical larvae blamed for caries, visible only to seers. Archaeology from a London cesspit yields molars plugged with beeswax mixed with cloves. Barbers' crude fillings crumbling to powder. Anecdotes paint vivid lives. Take Master Gilbert of Norwich, chronicled in 1390 to court rolls for pulling the abbot's fang sans consent. The holy man awoke mid-procedure, fleeing with half a tooth embedded in pliers. Or the Italian barber who advertised ivory transplants from oxen, hammering pegs into sockets, only for rejection to swell faces like harvest moons. Patience endured for lack of choice. Monasteries offered prayers, but barbers promised tangibles. Daily smells assaulted, wrought from gangrenous gums. Vinegar rinses biting nostrils. Charred lint from cauterizing sockets with hot irons that sizzled like fat on spits. Sounds echoed moans muffled by leather straps. Pliers clinking in basins. Apprentices chanting anatomy from crude charts. Incisors guard. Molars grind. Canines tear as beasts divine. Their hubris shown in transplants. Bones from executed criminals. Boiled clean in lye vats smelling of ash and alkali. Carved to fit. A 1450 Venetian diary notes a barber grafting a murderer's incisor into a bride's mouth pre-wedding. It held 3 days before festering. Subtle sarcasm laces these tales they thought grafting souls with teeth. Yet infection claimed more smiles than decay. Women sought them too, for beauty's sake. Powdered antlers filed into tips, set with gold wire, gleaming artificially. One intriguing French tale tells of a noble woman whose barber, you heard that right poisoned her blood with his tools, leaving her to drift away in feverish dreams of grinding jaws. As her teeth fell out and scattered onto sawdust-strewn floors, apprentices were busy counting their earnings, raking in threepence for each tooth pulled. Can you imagine? They were making a fortune, but the guilds were keeping a close watch, banning sorcerous herbs that they thought might mess with their practices. Yet, barbers, being the clever folks they were, started innovating. They came up with early braces made from catgut, tightening like the strings of a lute to hold everything in place. But this brings us to a more intense scene, the bloodletting chambers, where barbers turned into something like medieval doctors. Picture it, the room dimly lit, the air thick with anticipation, as veins were about to spill their secrets to the sharp lancet and the ever-reliable leech. Those little guys, leeches, were like slugs of salvation, slithering from jars into the heart of medieval medicine. Barbers kept them in damp cellars or in ponds that trickled like forgotten tears, ready for their next patient. Let's dive deeper into this world of venesection, the fancy term for bloodletting. As dawn broke, the light filtered through horn panes, casting a soft glow as barbers prepped for the day. They uncorked flasks where leeches swam in. Cool water, scented with moss. Patients would arrive, rolling up their sleeves, arms looking like veined maps of blue rivers. Tourniquets would bite into their skin, swelling the vessels like summer plums, ready for the cut. And then the lancets would flush a swift, double-edged slice, sterilized in boiling verjuice that smelled sour and sharp. Blood would patter into bowls, a rhythmic sound like summer rain on slate. Measured out in ounces using brass scales that the guild had approved. Leeches were the precision tools of their time, expertly placed on temples or groins, where they would suckle until they were full, dropping off after an hour. To coax them free, salt flakes were sprinkled, and the leeches would pulse farewell, leaving behind the weight of their meal. Historical records from 1348, right in the thick of the Black Death, tell us about barbers who applied thousands of leeches to desperate patients. One guy in Exeter bled a staggering 20 for pints over several weeks and somehow lived to tell the tale. Though he was paler than parchment by the end, superstitions were rampant back then. People believed leeches could read the quality of blood, turning black if bile was present. In Germany, barbers even consulted lunar charts, thinking bloodletting was best done under a gibbous moon. Some quirky relics of the time included moonstone amulets ground into paste, which were rubbed on the skin to call veins into action. The tales of failure are just as fascinating. There was a barber in Paris in 1415 who fainted while treating the king's evil, leaving his apprentice to finish the job amid the chaos. Froissart recounts a Scottish laird who bled dry during a hunt for having a hot head, collapsing as his hounds lapped up the spilled life. The sensory experience was intense. The metallic tang thick in the air, the cool slime of leeches, and the splash of blood echoing off stone walls. Instruments clattered flea cups made of horn and scarificators with spring-loaded blades that shredded skin to release pearls of blood. Barbers even theorized about zodiacal bleedings, believing that Aries ruled the head while Pisces ruled the feet. Charts hung on the walls, faded inks depicting stars as guides. While guild exams tested their skills on pigs, the squeals mixing with the instructor's murmurs. There was humor, too. They claimed seasonal purges, spring for blood, winter for phlegm, had patients queuing like penitents, emerging weak-kneed but convinced they were cured. Women in childbirth would bleed to rid themselves of retained humors, with midwives chanting as basins filled. One 1430 York mystery play even mocked a barber who mistook an artery for a vein, flooding his shop in a crimson tide as the blood cooled and began to congeal. Apprentices would stir up possets of milk and honey to revive the weary. Earnings flowed in 6 pence per pint, rivaling what goldsmiths made. This crimson craft wasn't just about bloodletting. It also led to Cupping's hollow embrace, where fire kissed flesh in a hopeful attempt to heal. It's wild to think about how these practices shaped medicine and society back then, isn't it? Cupping's glow began in shadowed alcoves, where barbers coaxed flames into fragile glass. Imagine the hush of a late afternoon in a 13th century Bologna workshop, embers crackling softly in a clay brazier like distant thunder over hills. The barber selected cups blown from Venetian glass, thin as onion skin, etched with faint zodiac signs. He held one to the flame until it bloomed with heat, then pressed it firm to the patient's back. Air contracted with a gentle pop, drawing skin into a taut blister, purple as ripening damsons. This, they swore, pulled poisons from depths, easing aches that twisted spines like ancient oaks in storm. Roots traced to Hippocrates, filtered through Arabic texts like Avicenna's canon, carried by pilgrims along spice roads. Barbers adapted, blending Greek fire with folk wisdom. Daily, after shaves, they'd cup shoulders knotted from side swings or merchants' pack burdens. The sensation, first warmth blooming, then a deep pull like earth's tide on flesh. Welts rose, tender as dawn's first light, pricked later to drain sluggish humors into rags that smelled of iron and sweat. Superstitions danced in the steam. In Spain's Reconquista shadows, barbers etched crosses on cups, claiming saints amplified suction against Moorish curses. One quirky rite from a 1360 Catalan herbal, honey dripped inside preheating, luring internal bees of disease to sting forth. Patients lay prone on benches strewn with lavender, breath sensing to the barber's low-chant Latin phrases invoking Galen. Voice is weaving with wind through shutter cracks. Anecdotes unfold like tapestries. Consider the Barber of Coventry in 1402, chronicled in guild ledgers, who cupped a bishop's gouty knees so fiercely the holy man levitated briefly from pain's grip, landing amid scattered coals. Or the French tale from Joinville's memoirs, Louis IX's barber cupping royal temples. During Crusade fever, blisters bursting to reveal clear serum of sainthood. Though historians whisper mere sweat, failures too. Overzealous cups left scars like Luna. Craters. 11425 London inquest blaming a merchant's death on cup-induced flux. Lungs drowned in drom. Blood. Sensory immersion deepened the rite. Glass cooled with faint tinkles, flesh yielding with sighs, herbal poultices comfrey, and yarrow smeared post-cup to soothe. Their earthy tang cutting smoke. Apprentices blew fresh cups, lungs aching from molten gathers, learning pressure by feel, to firm, and skin tore, to light, no pull. Humor glints softly. Barbers claimed cupping milked the body like a faithful cow. Patients emerging mottled, but mellow, shuffling home with tales of inner cleansing. Guilds regulated fines for cracked cups spilling flame yet innovation bloomed. Brass cups with pumps. Early vacuums hissing air away. Women favored facial cupping for beauty blooms, cheeks drawn rosy, though many awoke to bruises blooming like storm clouds. Earnings steadied shops fourpence per dozen cups, enough for new razors. But that warm pull fades into colder cuts, leading us gently to the bone setter's craft, where fractures met crude splints under lantern glow. Fractures snapped like dry branches in medieval mishaps falls from scaffolds, tourney spills. Plough kicks. Barbers step forth as bone menders, their shops echoing with winces and whittled wood. Picture a damp evening in 1350 York, rain pattering on thatch as a mason slumped in. Forearm angled wrong, bone ends grinding like millstones. The barber probed gently, fingers calloused from razors tracing splintered edges, diagnosing by swell and shade. Setting began with alignment patient braced on trestles padded with straw that rustled softly. Traction pulled via ropes over pulleys, greased with lard smelling of hickory smoke. Cracks realigned with thuds felt more than heard. Then splints, willow wands soaked in boiling pitch, flexible as reeds, bound with linen strips stiffened by egg white. Smells mingled resin sharp, pus faintly sour if infection lurked. Historical threads weave from Salerno's school, where barbers learned from Arab physicians like al-Zairawi. His surgery illustrated in manuscripts smudged by apprentice fingers. Guilds in 1375 Paris mandated bone exams. Pig carcasses cracked for practice. Femurs splintered with mallets ringing like bells. Superstitions bound breaks. Sympathetic magic, with ivory charms carved as whole bones, hung from necks on thongs of deer sinew. In Ireland, barbers rubbed fractures with foxglove sap, claiming vulpine cunning knit tissue. Quirky relic, a 1440 Swiss chronicle notes barbers drilling holes in skulls for brain bleeds, trepanning with rosewood augers that whirred like summer bees. Anecdotes breathe life. Master Rolfe of Bristol, 1398 court records tell, reset a knight's shattered leg post-joust, using iron pins forged hot. The noble rode again, crediting saintly intervention over barber's sweat. Tragedy shadowed a 1412 Flemish girl, arm reset to tight, gangrene crept green-black. Amputation following with sawdust flying like snow. Daily sounds, groans harmonizing with saw rasps on plaster. Casts, apprentices mixing gypsum from Paris quarries into milky slurries that hardened like stone. Dreams, textures tantalized splints smooth under palms, flesh hot and pulsing beneath. Subtle wit, barbers joked fractures sought straightness through suffering. Patients limping forth with crutches whittled fanciful, carved with beasts for luck. Earnings from sets rivaled wedding shillings for limbs, gold for spines. Women broke porcelain wrists in kitchens, set discreetly lest beauty mar. This mending flows onward to plague's grim dance, where barbers wielded blades against invisible foes. Plague winds whispered through 1348 Europe, buboes swelling like poisoned figs in groins and pits. Barbers, thrust as frontline cutters, faced miasmas in streets slick with fear. Shops transformed doors barred save for afflicted, air thick with vinegar fumes from braziers. A patient staggered in, bubo throbbing purple underarms, skin hot as forged scales. The barber lanced swift, scalpel parting flesh with a sigh, pus jetting yellow as bile, stench hitting like rotten eggs mingled with death. Based on Guy D. Chauliac's Chirurgia Magna, barbers followed protocols, incision crosswise, drainage into straw-lined pits. Leeches followed for residuals, engorging on tainted blood. Chronicles from Avignon note thousands lanced survivors scarred with pits like moonscape, branded badges of endurance. Superstitions surged. Barbers daubed cuts with holy water from pilgrim flasks, chanting psalms against God's wrath. Quirky, plague stones rubbed for virtue transfer, meteorites ground to dust for poultices. In Italy, barbers blue plague Dr. Beek's surly masks stuffed with herbs while lancing. Beek's muffling coughs. Anecdotes scar the page. The Barber of Siena, 1349 diary entry, lanced 200 daily, hands raw as flayed meat, collapsing from exhaustion amid unburied heaps. Froissart recounts a London barber mistaking pox for plague, lancing innocents who festered anew. Sensory barrage, screams piercing shutters, blades scraping bone if deep, herbal smokes curling thyme, and rue biting throats. Apprentices shoveled gore, barrows creaking to mass graves. Humor darkens softly. Barbers quipped buboes burst for buried secrets. Patients grateful for any dawn. Guilds rewarded plague work tax exemptions. Yet many fled, shops shuttered like tombs. Women bore buboes in childbirth horrors, barbers cutting amid contractions waves. As pestilence ebbed, tools cleansed in lime pits smelling of chalk ghosts. This dark tide recedes to eye woes, where barbers pierced sights with hopeful needles. Eyes, those fragile windows to the soul, drew barbers into delicate dangers under quivering candle flames. Imagine a misty morning in 15th century Bruges. Fog curling like spirits from canals as a weaver sought relief from a clouded lens. His shop, tucked in a gabled alley, held an oculist's corner, brass speculums gleaming faintly, needles fine as spider silk coiled in ivory boxes. The patient reclined on a velvet cushion faded to dusky rose. LIDs propped open with bone retractors that clicked softly like dewdrops on leaves. Cataract couching dominated, a rite from ancient India via Arab conduits, like Hunayn ibn Ishaq's translations. The barber pierced the sclera with a lancet curved like a crescent moon, dislodging the milky veil with a golden needle. A faint click echoed as lens shifted downward, light flooding anew, or darkness if hand wavered. Post-op, egg yolks bandaged in, yolks golden ooze meant to nourish sight. Smelling of fresh hay and faint sulfur. Superstitions veiled the craft. Eye-bright herb infusions drunk under Leo's stars. Petals floating like tiny suns. In England, barbers tied hare's eye charms to patients' wrists, believing lagomorph vision transferred luck. Quirky from a 1380 Bavarian manuscript, pigeon dung salves rubbed in, for birds see through storms, leaving lids crusted grey as dawn's skies. Anecdotes glimmer softly. Master Henry of Rouen, praised in 1435 guild rolls, restored a monk's sight mid-prayer, the holy man weeping tears of clarity onto altar cloths. Tragedy whispered, a 1408 Milan barber's slip-blinded a painter, canvas abandoned for beggar's bowl. Chronicles note success rates hovering ghostly half saw meadows bloom again. Half wandered eternal dusk. Sensory whispers, needles prick like distant bee sting, humors oozing viscous and clear, herbal compresses steaming chamomile calm. Apprentices practiced on sheep eyes, orbs popping wetly from sockets, practicing thrusts till masters nodded. Humor tints failure. Barbers claimed clouds fled at needles' nudge. Patients blinking forth with patched gazes, convinced of miracles amid blurs. Daily, after plague lancing, eyes awaited smiths with sparks embedded. Spinsters with strained threads. Earnings sparkled. Half-crown per eye. Jewels for nobles. Women veiled post-op. Silks whispering secrets of restored beauty. But sight's fragile gleam shifts as twilight gathers to wound stitching's patient threads, where flesh knit under trembling lamps. Wounds gaped from blade or claw in medieval melee. Barbers stitching like seamstresses of skin. Picture a torchlit eve in 1320 Edinburgh. A soldier dragged in. Gash across ribs weeping crimson rivulets. The shop reeked of pine tar and fresh blood, table strewn with goose quills for sutures. threaded with silk boiled in rosemary water. Cleaning first, wine poured bubbling from amphorae, stinging like nettles. Flushing grit from plough cuts or arrow holes. Probes delved, silver tips emerging grimed. Then stitching needles of boar bristle-piercing dermis with faint pops. Quills knotting tight as lovers' vows. Poultices followed, honey thick as amber, mixed with sphagnum moss that drank excess like thirsty earth. Roots in Celsus's De Medicina echoed in monastic scriptoria, where monks copied amid incense curls. Guilds in 1366 Florence licensed stitchers, exams on pig hides stretched taut. Superstitions sewed in, cobweb veils draped over, spider silk stronger than iron for holding life. In Wales, barbers chanted over wounds, invoking Gwydion the healer, voices low as river murmurs. Quirky, a 1410 York find archaeology yields needles tipped with magnet lodestone to draw iron poisons north. Anecdotes stitched tales. The Barber of Agincourt aftermath, 1415, mended Henry V's men. Quills from 500 geese, saving limbs from gangrene's grasp. Froissart pens a French knight's belly sewn post-duel, surviving to sire heirs, crediting Barber's fairy fingers. Sensory weave, threads tug like gentle waves, honey's sweet cloy cutting iron tang, scabs forming crusty as autumn leaves. Sounds, sighs of relief, scissors snipping ends with crisp whispers. Subtle wit, wounds weep till sewn to silence, barbers quipping as scars faded to silver lines. Apprentices unraveled practice knots, hands steadied on melons mimicking flesh. Women's childbirth tears stitched discreetly, whispers of modesty amid pain's ebb. This mending thread leads softly to hernia trusses, where bulges bowed to cunning belts. Hernias ballooned from labor's strain herders heaving bales, women birthing burdens. Barbers crafted trusses, leather cradles laced with whalebone stays. Dawn in a 1370 Genoa shop, hides tanned supple, cut to cradles cupping groins, padded with lamb's wool soft as cloud wisps. Fitted warm, straps buckling with clicks, they held guts in place like faithful hounds. Surgical boldness for the dyer, incisions over swellings, sacks tied off with catgut vanishing in bellies. Based on Al-Rozzi's treatises, barbers knotted percestrings, flesh pursing like drawn lips. Superstitions cradled, amber beads sewn in trusses, warding downward devils. Quirky Norman rite, pig bladder inflated inside wounds pre-stitch, popping to scare spirits. Anecdotes bulge. A 1422 London barber fitted Edward III's cousin, truss embroidered gold. Worn to counsel unashamed, tragedy. Botched cut in 1395 Bruges festered. Patient bursting internally mid-feast. Sensory hold. Leather creaking warm against skin. Cut knots tightening like vines. Ointments of St. John's wort golden and balsamic. Humor. Hernias hide till trussed like Christmas. Goose. Patience striding straighter. Guilds marked trusses with stamps, earning steady as tides. But trusses grip loosens into childbirth's shadowed aid, where barbers braved birth beds. Childbirth's throes summoned barbers, when nature faltered breech births, endless labors. Night in 1340 Paris, candles guttering as a noble woman labored, barber called with forceps crude as tongs. Midwives parted, he wielded hooks of silver, traction gentle yet grim, babe emerging slick and wailing into linens warmed by hearths. Instruments evolved from albucasis, vectis levers of boxwood, cephalotribs crushing skulls if doomed. Smells, blood rich as rust, afterbirth earthy, herbs burning mandrake for ease. Superstitions swaddled, umbilical cords tied with saint medallions, barbers chanting Ave Marias. Quirky, peony root necklaces on babes, for easy passage remembered. Anecdotes birth drama. The 1403 barber at Queen Isabeau's confinement, forceps saving air, rewarded lands. Peril, 1378 Florence, crushed skull spilling grey, midwife cursing barber's blade. Sensory storm, contractions groans like wind in caves, slime slick pools, first cries piercing fog. With whispers, barbers midwife miracles from mangled moments. Women endured, barbers fading as babes suckled. As birth cries hush, we glide to poison's antidotes, where barbers brood against toxins kiss. Poisons lurked in feasts and feuds, arsenic in wine, belladonna in salads. Barbers, as antidote artists, stocked theriacs, electuaries of 60 herbs, viper flesh fermented years in jars like buried treasure. A poisoned lord writhed pale as mist, barber dosing treacle thick and spicy. Emetics following syrup of violets purging green bile. From Mithridate's legacy via Galen, barbers renewed yearly with snake dances. Reptiles biting cockerels for venom harvest. Superstitions spiced. Unicorn horn scrapings, narwhal tusks dissolved, glowing faintly. Quirky 1450 Vienna. Barbers inhaled mercury vapors for internal armor. Voices husky eternities. Anecdotes intoxicate. Barber to Borges, rumored, saved Lucretia with Mithridate, though whispers doubt. A 1385 Oxford scholar, rat poisoned, vomited serpents per legend mere worms. Sensory brew, spices burning tongues, vomits acrid heave, reliefs cool possets. Humor, poisons flee before theriacs parade. This detox drifts toward final follies, but first, the scalds and burns southery. Burns charred from hearth spits. Forge leaps barbers slathered cold creams of lead oxide white as snow. Cooling flames rage. Picture 1360 blacksmith, arms bubbled raw, ointment spread thick, linen bound smelling of roses and nettle. From Hippocratic coolings, barbers layered hog's lard, yolks for blister shields. Superstitions cooled. Rainwater from Good Friday blessed burns away. Quirky, spider webs soaked in vinegar. Draped gossamer. Anecdotes scar. 1420 tourney night. Greaves melted. Barber's cream letting in remount. Sensory. Cream silk chill on fire-wept skin. Scalds from cauldrons overturned in hasty kitchens, cold barbers, with their salves of cucumber pulp. Chilled in wells, spread like morning dew on weeping blisters. Imagine the hush of a village evening in 1390 rural Kent. Steam still rising from a cook's splashed legs as she hobbled to the barber's door. Threshold crossed with a sigh. His pot simmered elderflower water, petals floating ethereal, mixed with oatmeal ground fine as dust from mill wheels. Layers built. First cool compresses wrung dripping. Then unguents of myrrh resin dissolved in olive oil, amber-scented and viscous, binding wounds beneath linen soft as forgotten prayers. Historical whispers, from Trochula's Women's Health Compendium, penned in 12th century Salerno. Guided hands barbers recited fragments by rote, voices low as brook murmurs over pebbles. Guilds in 1410 Nuremberg fined hasty salvers, mandating 3-day soaks in herbal baths scented with chamomile waves. Patients soaked in wooden tubs ringed by candle stubs, water rippling gently with each breath drawn. Superstitions soothed, skulls washed in milk from black cows, for night's coolness quenches fire. Quirky relic from a 1370 to Irish annals. Barbers buried patients' soiled rags at crossroads under full moons, appeasing fire sprites with offerings of butter pats. In Scotland, they traced sigils with burnt cork on skin, claiming runes rooted heat like rivers carving stone. Anecdotes bubble up. The Barber of Winchester, noted in 1445 episcopal records, treated a baker's entire family post-oven collapse, solves saving toes from blackening gangrene. The man kneeling in thanks with loaves still warm. Tragedy tinged a 1401 Paris tale. Noblewoman scolded by perfumed bath. Barbers lead heavy cream poisoning her further, breath slowing to whispers amid silk sheets. Sensory bomb enveloped, oil slick and warming slowly, blisters popping faint as bubble sighs. Air heavy with floral fog cutting charred meat reek. Apprentices stirred ceaselessly, pestles grinding petals to pastes that clung like loyal mist. Subtle humor simmers. Barbers quipped scolds sought smoothness through sorrow. Skins emerging pink and newborn, patients gliding home lighter. Earnings from burns steadied winter larders to pence per layer. Nobles tipping spices rare as hope. Women clustered post-kitchen woes, solves veiling scars beneath modest hems. But this cooling caress drifts us toward the final shadows of their trade, where tumors met the knife's uncertain kiss in flickering doubt. Tumors swelled unbidden lumps in breasts like hidden stones. Goiters ballooning throats like winter gourds. Barbers, bold excisers, faced them in alcoves dimmed by drawn shutters. Dawn in a 1420 Venice canal-side shop. A fishwife presented her neck's pendulous growth. Barber palpating firm, veins mapping blue beneath taut skin. Knife warmed in embers till cherry glow. Incision made with sizzle faint as fat on griddles. Smoke curling acrid. Drawn from Albucasis' illustrated atlas, Barbers dissected layers. Clumps of curved iron pinching vessels shut with clicks. Pus drained golden or curd white. Cavities packed with oaken ropes twisted tight. Impregnated with turpentine sharp as pine winds. Healing spanned moons, dressings changed amid vinegar steam. Superstitions swelled the right. Tumors pierced precut with silver needles to bleed their malice. Drops collected for alms. Quirky from 1355 German broadsheets. Barbers rolled excised lumps downhill at solstice, sending cancers to Earth's core. In Byzantium echoes, they bathed sights in viper wine, serpents' strength-conquering swellings. Anecdotes carved deep. Master Luca of Padua, 1438 fame, removed a duke's facial carbuncle. Knife flashing to reveal pearl with insoled as relic, funding guild halls. Peril shadowed, 1390 Exeter barber's breast excision nicked artery. Flood staining rushes crimson. Widow's wail echoing lanes. Sensory incision, blades sear like comet tail. Flesh parting with wet whispers. packings fibrous against probes. Smells layered, burnt protein bitter, turpentine piercing, herbs masking decay's first breath. With whispers, tumors hide till unveiled like buried coins, survivors bearing scars as talismans. Apprentices sketched swellings in wax tablets, learning contours by candle's patient gaze. Women sought breast excisions furtively, veils drawn tight against prying eyes. Guilds debated excisions' bounds, banning deep ventures lest souls slip through cuts. As tumors' ghosts recede, we linger on their everyday follies, where simple shaves turned to sepsis symphonies. Now, picture the cascade of errors that shadowed every blade's dance sepsis blooming from unsterile stee. Medieval shops, damp as morning meadows, harbor germs in every crevice, razors rinsed in stale water, scented faintly of rust, basins crusted with dried syrah, a routine shave, lather spread, blade gliding smooth, yet a nick wept overnight into fever's arms, pus gathered yellow as harvest stubble, lymph nodes swelling like awakened roots, patients returning pale, whispering of Barber's curse. Chronicles brim with such tales. The 1327 London Guild inquest into Barber John Leblear, who nicked a dozen chins pre-market, half-festered to lockjaw, jaws clenched like winter earth. Superstitions blamed elf-shot, invisible arrows from puckish spirits, countered by rowan twigs bound to wrists. Quirky cure, urine douches from virgins, golden streams believed pure as dawn. Anecdotes infect memory. Flemish chronicler notes 1410 barber who shared lancet spread French itch through village. Scabs flaking like autumn bark. Humor dark. Barbers loaned more than blades passing melodies like market gossip. Sensory plague. Fevers burning inward. Pus popping with curd smells, incisions reopened stinking as graves. Guilds mandated fire cleansing, yet folly persisted. Women shunned tainted shops, favoring cloistered healers. This era's echo leads to quack remedies they peddled, bombs promising eternity. Quackery crowned their shelves. Universal salves of stag horn ash mixed with mercury sublimate, glowing faintly under lanterns. Sold for all wounds inward and out, smeared thick on ags or aches. A 1385 Bologna apothecary raid uncovered barbers, hawking philosophers' grease, lard boiled with toads, warts distilled into potency. Patients slathered, emerging slick and hopeful, though rashes bloomed like errant roses. From rogue herbals like the Trochilus pseudepigrapha, barbers blended nightshade for sleep, pupils dilating vast as midnight skies. Superstitions sanctified, mandrake roots human-shaped, screams heard at harvest under stormy gales. Anecdotes quack loud. Barber of York Minster precincts, 1440, to accused of selling eternal youth oil from Wales spermaceti, duping pilgrims who aged unamused. Sensory slick, greases cloying sweet, skins itching infernal dances. Wit, quacks cured purses before persons. Legal woes followed stocks for fraud, ears cropped. Yet trust endured, barbers' charisma cloaking incompetence. But that gentle unraveling brings us full circle to their guild lives, where oaths bound folly in brotherhood. Guilds wove barbers into fraternal webs, halls timbered with oak from royal forests, smelling of beeswax polish and ale. Meetings under zodiac banners, Masters in furred robes intoning charters from parchment crackling like leaves. Apprentices knelt, hands on relic bones, swearing fidelity amid candle drips. Feasts marked calendars St. Cosma's Day with roast swan, blood puddings echoing trade. Initiations, blindfolded cuts on melons, fruits spitting juicy secrets. Women edged in as widows inheriting shops, stirring lathers veiled. Earnings pooled for widows' funds, silver tallied by a bossy clicking soft. Rivalries simmered, surgeons scorning barbers as mere shearers, feuds spilling to courts. As guilds faded with Renaissance lights, barbers clung to old ways. Their world dims now, but one last whisper. Noble follies, where kings trusted blades over books. Royal barbers held sway Henry the Fourth's man. William Payne bled the king pre-Shrewsbury. Faltering steps blamed on overzealous vain taps. Courts reeked of privilege. Razors chased with cloth of gold. Leeches fed royal bloodlines. Anecdotes regal. Edward III's barber excised a wart with diamond lancet. Gem lost in royal flesh. Superstitions crowned. Kings wore barber amulets of gold lancets. Yet death's mounted Charles VI. Bled to mania by over-trusting hands. Sensory pomp. Pomander's masking gore. Silks staunching flows. Wig regal. Crowns bled by common blades. We've wandered far through these shadowed workshops where blades whispered promises, both gentle and grave, but as embers cool in the hearths of memory. Let us pause on the cusp of their twilight lingering in the courts, where even kings bowed to thee, barber's basin and lancet. Imagine the hush of a royal antechamber in 1420 to Windsor. Tapestries heavy with dust motes dancing in shafts of winter sun, as Henry V's personal barber, Thomas Trotter, prepared his sovereign for battle's eve. The air carried rosewater from porcelain ewers and the faint metallic promise of veins yet untapped. Nobles trusted these men not as servants, but as privy confidants, their hands steadying crowns as surely as chins. Chronicles from the close rolls detail how Trotter drew a pint from the king's arm to cool crusade fires, leaving Henry pale but resolute, striding forth with steps measured like a metronome's sigh. Royal favor bred excess. Barbers attended coronations, shaving beards symbolic of rebirth. Razors engraved with fleur-de-lis glinting under abbey lights. One quirky rite from a 1399 French ordinance. The Dauphin's first shave by guild master. Clippings burned in silver bowls lest witches weave. Spells from royal locks. Superstitions reigned supreme lancets blessed by bishops. Dipped in holy oil scented of kerosene and myrrh. Patience, from dukes to dowagers, clutched talismans of barber saints. Fingers tracing worn silver icons amid the pull of leeches fat as blackberries. Anecdotes crown these tales. Edward III's barber in 1369, amid Poitiers' aftermath, reset the aging king's dislocated shoulder. With greased rollers carved from walrus ivory, smooth as sea-worn pebbles, the monarch jousted anew at 70, crediting the ivory whisper. Yet folly-shadowed pomp. Charles VI of France, bled repeatedly by his barber Guillaume Portal in 1392 for lunar madness, descended into glass-shattering frenzies, shards crunching under castle rushes like brittle dreams. Sensory splendor enveloped, pomanders swung on gold chains. releasing frankincense veils over blood's tang. Linens of finest flax staunching flows, with whispers softer than courtly sighs. Humor glints in velvet robes. Barbers quipped that king's blood ran bluer, yet spilled as red as peasants, emerging from chambers with purses heavy as their patience' regrets. Guilds elevated royals' men to mastership sans apprenticeship. Their shops gilded fronts overlooking Thames or Seine. Women of rank summoned them veiled queens like Margaret of Anjou in 1450. Her migraines cupped under damask drapes. Glass domes kissing temples till rosy blooms promised clarity. Earnings flowed like royal bounty. Manners granted, titles whispered. But noble trust crumbles gently into the apprentice's hidden world, where boys learned folly's full measure under masters' watchful eyes. Apprenticeships bound lads from dawn's mist to guild oaths, indentures sealed with wax stamps warm as hearth seals. Picture a 12-year-old orphan in 1330 Coventry, bundled from workhouse to barber's door. Fresh old crossed amid geese honking market-bound. 7 years stretched like winter nights, first sweeping clippings golden as autumn straw, crunching under bare feet chilled by stone flags. Then boiling basins water steaming rosemary clouds. Instruments clattering like silver bells in froth. Masters taught by shadow, holding wrists over razors, murmuring as steady as Yggdrasil's roots. Practice on turnips for veins, tubers slicing pink and wet, mimicking arms yield. Failures etched memory a nicked pig in 1375 guild trials squealed to rafters. Blood puddling warm, the boy flogged with birch switches that whistled air. Superstitions schooled. Apprentices wore hare's foot pouches for nimble fingers, chanting Galen's axioms by firelight flickering faces gaunt. Quirky rite from Scottish barber's law, midnight initiation baths in mare's milk, for equine endurance in long vigils. Daily smells layered youth, singed hair acrid, leech jars musty as forest floors after rain. Anecdotes apprentice deep. Young Will of Bristol, 1418 records show, saved his master from lockjaw by pulling infected quill with child's pliers. Earning freedom early amid cheers and ale. Tragedy, 1380 to Paris lad, overeager on cataract couch, blinded mentor's eye, fleeing to monasteries cloistered peace. Sensory forge, calluses blooming rough as bark, lather's goat fat slickness, first successful shaved sigh of master's nod. Wit from elders, apprentices cut hair by day, teeth by nerve's edge by night. Girls rarely entered, save widows' daughters' stirring pots veiled. This forging flows to widows' shadowed legacies, where women guarded blades in secrecy. Widows inherited shops when death claimed husbands. Veils drawn as they wielded razors, with hands once cradling babes. In 1405 York, Mistress Agnes le Chirurgeon trimmed aldermen's beards by lantern glow, her touch surer than men's from years of watching. Guilds grudgingly licensed, rolls noting by sufferance, yet she lounced boils and cupped migraines. Earnings weaving dowries for daughters, superstitions softened their craft. Widows braided husbands' last clippings into talismans, hanging from beams like willow wisps. Quirky from 1430 Flemish charters, women barbers invoked Artemis in Greek whispers. Moon goddess steadying scalpels. Anecdotes empower. The widow barber of Chester, chronicled 1391, appalled the mayor's fang mid-council, pliers flashing to applause, securing guild vote rights. Parallel, 1427 London widows leech overdose felled a merchant, stocks her punishment amid jeers. Sensory grace, fingers deft from spindle twirl, solves scented personal as hearth herbs. Humour veiled, widows cut closer, for they've naught to lose. Their shops hummed softer, women clustering for discreet dentures. But widows' veil lifts to rival trades, where surgeons sneered from ivory towers. Surgeons, university-clad in scarlet robes, scorned barbers as butcher barbers, feuds flaring like forged sparks. In 1370 Paris, faculty petitions banned barbers from high surgery, yet streets favored quick blades over Latin lectures. Guild wars peaked 1461 in London barbers petitioning Henry VI for separation, granite in charters echoing whole beams. Superstitions pitted. Surgeons claimed barbers summoned demons with hasty cuts. Quirky broadside war. Ballads mocking surgeons' bloodless books verses. Barbers' life-spilling hands. Anecdotes clash. Battle of Barbers versus Physicians, 1328 Bologna, ended in brawl. Lancets versus Leeches flying amid. Market stalls. Sensory divide. Surgeons' incense cloisters versus Barbers' vinegar reek. Wit sharpened. Surgeons theorize death. Barbers hasten it practically. Rivalry waned with Renaissance, barbers yielding complex cuts. This strife settles into daily shop symphonies, rhythms binding era's pulse. Daily life pulsed like heartbeats measured in basins dawn. Shaves for early risers, noon's tooth yanks for market folk, vespers bleedings for laborers' aches, streets coal softly, razors sharp. Veins wise, shops nestled gabled, signs creaking wine sung. Interiors rushes fragrant with crushed mint masking older stains. Sensory orchestra, clippers snipping rhythmic as looms. Lava whisks frothing clouds. Chatter muffled by towels damp and warm. Seasons tuned trades spring purges for blood flush. Winter cupping chills. Earnings tallied, pence from peasants, shillings from squires, pooling for guild feasts. Women filled afternoons, beauty trims veiling deeper woes. But day's close draws us to superstition's deeper weave, where faith framed every flame. Superstitions silkened every stroke from saints invoked pre-lancing to moon-phased phlebotomies. Lunar grimoires dictated full moon for fluxes, waning for tumors. Barbers consulted astrolabes of brass, dials clicking stars' slow waltz. Quirky compendium from 1350 Regensburg. Barber's primer of celestial cuts, charts pairing zodiac to body zones, Aries head shaved underarm sign. Relics ruled. Cosmas Damian's teeth shards ground into powders for toothache, swallowed with wine sour as vinegar dreams. Elf-bolts prehistoric flints rubbed on wounds for ancient healing. Anecdotes enchant. 1413 Welsh barber, using saint's bone lancet, miraculously stanched unstanched flow. Pilgrim sight born. Sensory mysticism, relic dust chalky on tongues, chants humming bone deep. Humor haunts, stars guided better than guild oaths. Faith bridged to eras close, Renaissance lights piercing. Medieval mist. Renaissance dawns crept softly over medieval barbers' world, like morning mist lifting from dew-kissed meadows to reveal new horizons of glass and Galen unbound. Imagine a crisp autumn twilight in 1490 Florence, where a barber surgeon named Tommaso del Barbieri shuttered his shop for the last time. Razors laid to rest beside printing presses humming with Vesalius's fresh anatomies. Universities bloomed, dissecting cadavers under vaulted halls scented of formaldehyde and candle wax. Drawing the skilled from street-side stools to lecture podiums carved from ancient oaks. Barbers clung to traditions, their poles still swirling in village squares. Yet the age of microscopes whispered obsolescence, lancets dulled by scalpels forged in fire and reason. Guilds evolved slowly, England's companies splitting fully by 1745 into barbers and surgeons proper. Charters crumbling like dry leaves under progress's step. Chronicles from the College of Physicians note barbers reduced to minor surgery, tooth pulls, and shaves, their grander claims fading into folk memory. Superstitions persisted stubbornly. Rural practitioner still bled under zodiac shadows. Charts yellowed but cherished. Quirky transition. A 1520 German woodcut shows barbers hawking old arts alongside new spectacles ground from Venetian crystal, eyes peering sharper through lenses that mocked their cloudy couches. Anecdotes mark the shift. Hieronymus Brunschwig, barber turned author in 1497 Strasbourg, penned the noble art of surgery, plates showing cupping domes beside astrolabes, bridging eras with ink-stained hands. Yet failure lingered. A 1515 Bologna barber, ignoring anatomy texts, trepanned a skull to deep. Grey matter spilling like porridge to floor rushes, sensory fade, shops emptying. Echoes of plier cracks unanswered. Herbs dusty on shelves as patients sought physicians in woolen robes. Humor whispers in decline. Barbers cut hair eternal. But medicine moved on. Shops surviving on nostalgia's gentle coin. Women transitioned too. Some apprenticing formally. Veils lifted to gild robes. But legacies endure beyond fade, etched in bones and tales that time polishes smooth. Archaeology whispers truths. From Earth York's 1980s digs unearthed barber kits. Lancets corroded green. Dental files spiraled like snail shells. Nestled in coffin soil beside skeletons, with filed molars and cupping scars faint as river maps on. Ribby, London cesspits yielded leech jars shattered, fossils of fat worms calcified in lime. Museums cradle poles from 1600, stripes faded yet symbolic, red for blood eternal. Primary sources illuminate. Froissart's chronicles detail bleedings amid battles, blood arsing like crimson rain. Guild rolls tally fines for overdrawing ounces. Ledgers scripted in quill scratches. Manuscripts like the 1375 Zodiac Man chart body zones. Barber doodles in margins stick figures bled at ankles under Pisces gaze. Quirky relics of 1420 Bruges barbers will bequeathing my secret. Toothworm powder, clove, and myrrh. Recipe surviving in notary wax seals. Sensory revival through finds. Reconstructed shops smell. Vinegar sharp. Razors balance cool in palm. Wit from graves. Barbers buried their errors deep. These remnants remind how blades bridged daily dread to desperate hope. Patient stories, pieced from coroners' inquests, paint intimate agonies. Take Agnes of Lincoln, 1387 records. Barber pulled tooth abscessed to jaw death. Her cry echoing assizes, or Sir Geoffrey de la Mare, Fortino to bled for melancholy, collapsing mid-hunt. Hounds scattering as life pooled leaf-strewn. Women like Joan the Weaver, 1365 York, cupped for monthly flux. Welts fading to freedom from pain's grip. Superstitions in writs. Complaints of elf-shot shaves causing lockjaw. Remedies Rowan-ash rubs. Anecdotes humanize. Barbers as village anchors, shaving widows gratis. Pulling children's teeth with honeyed tails. Textures live. Flesh yields recalled in bone grooves. Lives cut short or lengthened by trembling hands. Humor in hardship. Patience joked better barber's knife than devil's claw. Their world. Flawed tapestry. Wove survival's thread. Instruments evolution gleams in collections lancets lengthening to fleams with spring loaded. Pricks, thumb sharp. Dental pelicans evolving beak-like grips. Ivory handled for surety. Cupping scarificators. Wheels of 15 blades spinning blood pearls. Treffines with rosewood handles. Walling bone dust fine as flour. From Alzai-Rawi to Fabrici, Barbers adapted Arabic steel. 2 European forges, edges honed singing soft. Sensory craft, strops of Spanish leather supple. Oils of almond sweetening steel kisses. Guild marks stamped half-scions rampant. Shears crossed, wit forged. Tools outlived their wielders' wisdom. Daily smells reconstructed, lie soap-biting, blood congealing tacky. This craft's echo leads reflectively to why they persisted, despite folly's shadow. Why endure? Necessity's cradle. Villages distant from Salerno sages, Barber's first port for plough cuts, birth woes, humoral theory. Gripped like ivy, imbalances bled away, communities bound in basin rituals. Faith fortified, Saints Cosmas Damian proving miracles sans fee, Barbers heirs apparent. Economics anchored, low entry, high demand shaves pence, surgeries shillings. Sustaining families through famines, social weave. Barbers gossiped news over lavas. Confidence in chin's cradles, subtle sarcasm. They harmed as healed. Yet hands were all folk had. Women trusted kin. Barbers bridging to midwives' realms. Legacy lingers in modern echoes. Barber poles spin still. Red, white, blue, some claim veins, artery. Cleanliness added later. Dentistry splits 18th century. Yet chairside chats recall medieval murmurs. As echoes hush, we've traversed their full arc. We've wandered these shadowed paths tonight. From swirling poles and misty streets to royal chambers dimmed by doubt. Through blades that promised balm yet often brewed bitter brews. Medieval barbers, those gentle butchers of beard and body, remind us how hands ventured where knowledge faltered, cutting through history's veil with lancets and quiet resolve. Their world fades now like candle smoke curling to rafters, leaving scents of herbs and iron on night's breath. Like, subscribe if these sleepless histories lull you softly. Comment where you're listening from and what time it is there. Perhaps dawn creeps in some corner of the world. Settle deeper into dreams. Let forgotten workshops dissolve into starlit peace. Good night.